Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of today, Tuesday, September 24th, 2024. This meeting is being held in person in our hearing room at 1 Center Street on the 9th floor. It's also being held via Zoom and live streamed on our YouTube channel. And we are resuming this afternoon with public hearing item number 5, and I will turn it over to Corey Harala to take us through the afternoon agenda.
Thanks, Sarah. We'll begin with public hearing item number 5, LPC 25-01907, application for certificate of appropriateness, the Borough of Manhattan, block 1392, lot 25, 53 East 77th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a modified Neo-Spanish Renaissance style residence altered by Pleasance Pennington in 1926 to 27 from what was originally a Beaux-Arts style residence designed by Henry Rutgers Marshall and built in 1900 to 01. The application is to alter the primary and secondary facades, expand a rooftop addition, and construct a rear yard addition.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ward Dennis with Higgins Quays Barth and Partners. I'm joined today by Marcus Tashansky, Andres Bala, and Karen Bao from Studio MDA, Frank Hoftel, who is the owner's representative, and my colleague Jonathan Taylor. So the project we're looking at today, 53 East 77th Street. This is on the north side of 77th Street, on the Upper East Side Historic District. The proposal is to redo a 1927 facade to its original 1901 appearance, which is what you see in the photograph here. And we will go into both the existing conditions and the history of how the building got this way in a moment. The proposed use for the building is as a gallery. It's currently a fully commercial building and will continue to be a commercial building. The project, the proposal also includes enlargement of an existing penthouse at the roof and a full height, a one-story full lot enlargement at the rear of the building for commercial purposes. So here is just a map showing the location of the building. We're sort of on the edge of the Upper East Side Historic District at the north end. The building immediately to our west, the white brick apartment building, is outside the district. You can see that the building is on the north side between Madison and Park. This is a series of maps showing the evolution of the block. I think most notably, you can see our site highlighted in yellow. The original building was constructed as a standalone mansion, not as part of a row. I think most importantly to take away from this map is the evolution of the block from 1902, where it sort of had the very typical donut at the center, to the current day, where most of the interior of the block is infilled with 1, 2, and taller story buildings. And we'll show this in a little more detail, but this just shows how the block evolved over time and relevant to the rear yard extension that we are proposing. So this is the original building in 1901, designed by Henry Rutgers Marshall, built for Paul Lester Ford, who was a novelist at the time, done in the high Beaux-Arts style, again, a standalone mansion. Limestone base. It had the left entry in the photo, which you see in the detail on the right, was the main entry to the building. The right entry in the left-hand photo was a carriageway. The base of the building was limestone, and the treatment of the limestone did return around to the first 2 bays on the side of the building. So that west side of the building has always been exposed and has always had a finished treatment. On the upper stories, brick with limestone trim. As you'll see, most of the brick on the upper stories still exists. The limestone was removed in the 1920s. These are just 2 additional photos from early on, showing shortly thereafter the building immediately to our east was constructed. So you get this sort of pair of Beaux-Arts buildings. The original owner, Paul Ford, was tragically killed in this building in 1902. The building changed hands a number of times, and in the 1920s, It was bought by Joseph Kerrigan, who had the building renovated as he and his wife had a large art collection. So they renovated it into what the designation report describes as a modified Neo-Spanish Renaissance style building. You can see in the tax photo and in the 1940 tax photo on the left and the 1980 tax photo on the right that on the exterior, a lot of the workmanship and detailing was not particularly well done. Those ghosts that you see above the windows at the what reads now as the third floor and the fourth floor appear to have been part of the original design. The limestone was removed at the base of the building and a header brick configuration was installed. I think notably there was another building by the original architect in the Upper East Side Historic District, which had also been altered in a similar way. And the designation report in that building, referring to the 77th Street building, describes it as having fallen victim to this practice in 1927-28. Notably, I think most of all of the information we have found on the renovation from the 1920s really talks about the interior renovation. The architects for that were not the same architect as for the exterior. The exterior architect was Pleasance Pennington. And most of what is talked about is the elaborate and very lavish interior. The exterior is not mentioned in any of the contemporary pieces. And I think, clearly looking at it was given less attention by the owners and the architects at the time of conversion in the 1920s. Pennington was primarily an architect who worked on apartment buildings, but he did do other row houses, notably 45 East 63rd Street shown here. At the time of designation, this was described as a neoclassical building in the designation report. The commission in 2004 approved undoing that neoclassical design and redoing the building in its original neo-Grec style, which is what you see in the right-hand photo. And there are other cases on the Upper East Side Historic District where style buildings have been modified. These are two examples from the Upper East Side. On the left, originally a vaguely neoclassical style, was completely refaced in limestone. That was approved in 2015. And then on the right, neo-Grec was completely refaced with limestone in the neo-Grec style in 2006. These two examples, unlike the previous one that I showed, are actually changing the design of the buildings from the original and from the modified. In our case, we are proposing to go back to an original 1901 design, which is, of course, well documented. So I'm going to take you through some photos of the existing condition of the building. These are the views on 77th Street from the left, starting at the east and moving to the west, with a right-hand photo showing the view across Madison Avenue. You can see in that right-hand photo, or in the two right-hand photos, how that side elevation is this is very much a three-dimensional building meant to be read in 3 dimensions. And then details, on the left photo, you can see the existing egg and dart limestone course that sits at the 4th floor. That's part of the original 1901 design, as is all of the brickwork on the upper portion of the building above what reads as the 2nd story. So they did infill with matching brick, just did not do a particularly good job on the infill at that arch that you see in the center photo. We'll see in a moment, but about 60% of the brick masonry on the building is original to the 1901 building. And above the 2nd story, probably closer to 80% of the brick is original to the 1901. These are some images at the base of the building. You can see that they have this sort of oversized header brick that they used at the base where they remove the limestone. And on the left, the front entrance door, which is perhaps the most Spanish element in this modified neo-Spanish Renaissance building. The canopy that you see here was added later with a certificate of appropriateness. And then on the side elevation of the building, again, most of the brick is original to 1901. And you can see that there are a number of limestone string courses continuing across the building that are also part of the 1901 design. The 1927 design did take that bay window at the side of the building and reclad it in brick and did add the penthouse above. And then some additional details on the right is that reclad bay window that was originally a much more open and pyramidal bay. And then another detail showing the egg and dart returning around to the side of the building at the top floor. So this is a analysis that we did. The number here is actually incorrect. It is about 58 to 60% of the brick on the building is original to the 1901. Of course, most of the limestone was removed, but there is some limestone that remains. And then, of course, at the base of the building, all of the limestone was removed and replaced with brick. This is a view of the penthouse at the roof, again, constructed as part of the 1927 design. We do propose to enlarge this penthouse, bring it forward. And also we propose to reclad the brick of the penthouse to match the brick at the base of the building. The rear elevation is entirely from 1901. The second story, that I-beam that you see at the second story, is about 23 feet tall. And that is where we would bring out the one-story rear yard extension. Above that, the rest of the rear elevation would be untouched, except at the penthouse level, where again, we would be recladding it with brick to match below. And then notably at the third floor on this elevation, those windows that you see at the rear are decorative glass windows from the 1927 renovation. Again, I think that the real attention in the 1920s was paid to the interior. So we do propose to retain these windows in their existing position as part of the renovation of the rear of the building. And you can see that there are 4 windows across, and then there's also windows at the chamfers. At the rear yard, we have a hardscape rear yard. We have on the right-hand photo immediately to our west is the white brick apartment building. And then looking to the east, you can see the larger buildings that extend within the donut. And you can see that here with, it's not just one-story extensions into the donut, but also taller buildings and taller extensions that extend into the donut. We also have a one-story building immediately to the rear of us, which is an extension or a part of the white brick apartment building behind us. So there is not really a traditional donut here. I think that the build out into the rear yard is clearly appropriate, and in fact is something that the commission approved in the past with a different design for a winter garden in the rear of this building. And then just 2 views looking straight down to the north at the one-story extension behind us, and then looking to our east, we not only have the buildings built out into the donut, we have sky bridges, and there's a lot happening back here. So I'm going to hand it over to Marcus to take us through the design, but just to leave it here with on the left, the 1901 original design in the Beaux-Arts style. At the center, the 1920s renovation, which on the exterior really just removed decorative finishes and left a rather austere and kind of clunky box. So at the right is our proposal to restore this back to 1901. As Marcus will show you, we are being as close as possible to the original design as we can be based on photographs and other information. And we've developed a lot of really good details and information for how this will be done. So.
Hi, Marcus Tohanchi, Studio MDA. Great to be back here. I'm going to be very brief. I know you had a long day already. Maybe just a few quick words. I found we were incredibly lucky that we actually found the information that we used to create the design that brought us back to 1902. One of the kind of forensic work that we did helped us finding an article in Architectural Record in 1903. And based on that photograph, we actually were able to reconstruct a lot of the details, and which you will see in the upcoming presentation. One other important part that I want to emphasize is that the owner of the building, the new owner of the building, is a multi-generational art collecting family specializing in modern masters. So they're very particular about authenticity, and they were incredibly excited to find a building that will become the home to their gallery, but also to their foundation. Unlike the comment earlier that a lot of money is spent for little work, we're going to spend a lot of money for a lot of work. The commitment is there to really do it in the utmost detail, as detailed and true to the original intent as possible. Just to summarize, the main architectural changes will be in terms of the volume is adding in addition to the back, which will allow the gallery to have a big exhibition space in the back with an entrance at grade. We're also proposing an addition of the penthouse. This will allow the elevator to be included in the penthouse structure. This is an extension by about 12 foot 10, and I'll show you the pictures in a minute. Other than that, the building heights remains the same. The facade, as Ward mentioned, we are actually all of the window openings that you see on the upper floors remain the same as they were in 1901. We're not changing them. We're keeping the original brick. We are going to match the existing brick wherever it was replaced with non-matching brick. And we're going to add the limestone facade in detail with carved Indiana limestone, which I will show you also in a minute. The west elevation, you can see the addition of the penthouse on the top. Again, we're going to replace all of the brick that is not matching the original 1901 brick. Same on the bottom of the facade where you see the yellow brick. We're putting back the window openings as they were originally, and we're also restoring or rebuilding the bay window as it was originally intended. On the back of the building, we are going to remove the fire stair because it's a single use. We don't need a secondary fire stair. We're also going to remove the vent that was put in the 80s for a restaurant that is not used anymore. We're going to restore the brick as mentioned, and the part not visible from the side will be facing 78th Street. On the bottom will be a stucco finish, but where visible it will be the yellow brick. In section, you can see that we're not doing any excavation or foundation work. We're going to keep more or less the position of the elevator to avoid any underpinning or hitting rock. The extension in the back you can see on the ground floor, and the extension of the penthouse on the top floor. On the penthouse level, we'll remove all of the mechanical equipment and dunnage that was placed for the restaurant and minimize it to what is needed for a gallery use. We're extending the penthouse by 12 foot 10. The fenestration in the back of the penthouse is inspired by the window system of the back of the facade. We're also adding the limestone detailing that we find of the rest of the building to make it a coherent appearance throughout. These are pictures from the mock-up. This is the front elevation of the primary facade. And you can see the left is the high resolution rendering. On the right, the picture that was taken standing right opposite. And this is from the side. You can see the penthouse structure, left in the rendering, right in the mock-up. And I'm just going to click through those. And this is as you go down Madison Avenue. And this is seen from 78th Street, so the addition will not be visible. We are planning, as mentioned, to remove the fire stair, the vent, but also to replace the brick to match the original brick from 1902. In more detail, these are references, and as you can see on the on those two medals, we found the coins, which we're also planning on replacing. These are coins that actually, one of them is, you can find it at the Met, but we're really planning on restoring the building to its original detail, including the coins at the entrances of each side. This is in more detail. The main entrance, which is at grade, with the iron door, with the glazing between the iron. The design is inspired by the photos we found from the bay windows. And this will be what was the carriage entrance, the service entrance. I can tell you a story about the coins, but I'm going to spare you that. These are the two windows in the center of the building. And more details of the limestone work that we intend to do, which is something we have done before on 10 East 78th Street. I don't know if you remember that project, was some time ago, but was done in great detail. And these are the windows on the front elevation, which will be wood windows. Forest details. Oops, sorry, I think I'm going the wrong way. Apologies. And the upper floors also wood windows. And same here. I'm just going to go through this quickly. The balustrade, we're intending to again restore it, and this will be carved again in limestone. And these are the side windows, which will be, since they wrap around, we will also make them out of wood to align with the front facade. I'm just going to click quickly through those. This is the bay window as being reconstructed. This is the addition in the backyard. The window at the penthouse. And with that, I thank you very much. And any questions on me?
Thank you. All right, questions, commissioners? Okay, all right, not seeing any questions just yet, so we'll move to public testimony, and we may have questions after that. So we'll start with Theodore Grunwald. So, excuse me. Just hang on one moment while we get you a microphone.
Good afternoon. I'm Theodore Grunwald, and I'm reading for landscape architect, author, and distinguished historic preservation advocate Michael Gotkin. 53 East 77th Street is a massively important arts and crafts style townhouse by a significant Boston architect, perhaps his only work in New York City. And I'm amazed to hear HDC and other historic preservation groups giving their blessing to its total removal and modification into an approximation of an earlier structure. This is an outrage. The Kerrigan House, as it now stands, was the work of Boston architect Paul Hunt. Please note that Pleasance Pennington, a society architect, was merely the associated architect as he was registered in New York, but Hunt was the actual designer. Hunt was the son of painter William Morris Hunt and nephew of architect Richard Morris Hunt, the most important American painter and architect of the time. Hunt's Boston works are all protected by landmark status. The New York townhouse was commissioned in the 1920s by Hunt's relative, his niece, Esther Kerrigan, to replace the then out-of-style and bombastic Beaux-Arts structure. Using the bare structure of the original house, Hunt completely reconfigured the building's plan, elevation details. Interestingly, he left a small ghostly remnant of the earlier Beaux-Arts facade on the front, part of his eccentric aesthetic, and something that should have been notable and of interest to preservationists. The resulting house was an amalgam of Spanish medieval and arts crafts, incorporating many antique Spanish elements, including historic doors and iron, as well as new medieval style decorative details. Very spare for its time, the arts and crafts style was in many ways an American precursor to what we now consider modern. This aesthetic change in its architectural taste was understood to be fresh and advanced at the time it was created, but now seems to be misunderstood by ignorant arbiters of historic preservation in New York. The simplicity of the facade is a deliberate choice by a discerning architect advocating a new style that looks both forward and also back to historical precedents to create a spare but intricately detailed and patterned facade for this prominent location on the Upper East Side. To conclude, how could you possibly endorse its destruction? To be replaced by an ersatz replica, an approximation of a more typical and actually rather poorly detailed structure that was there before. What exists has integrity. This is probably the most notable arts and crafts mansion in Manhattan, called out in the LPC designation report, and it is now meeting its fate at the hands of the preservation community. This is a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll note that there's no one else in the hearing room to speak, so I will turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Carroll. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of hands raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society in New York. Christina Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And once you're panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the 1926 makeover of this house in the Spanish Renaissance style was comprehensive and is a significant 100-year-old alteration. Now, under other circumstances, we would find that current design should be retained. However, in this case, we find the workmanship of the renovation was poor. The house was covered with a series of scars that speaks more to an architectural trauma than a fashionable makeover. Therefore, we somewhat reluctantly support this well-detailed proposal to restore the house to its original 1900 appearance. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Zainab Turan from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Zainab Turan speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Our Preservation Committee can support this application. We believe that restoring the facade to a modified version of its handsome 1901 Beaux-Arts condition is appropriate in this context. Although we acknowledge the appeal of the building's neo-Spanish Renaissance phase or arts and crafts phase, as Mr. Grunwald just said, that existed for almost a century. We commend the client for preserving some of the interior elements from this phase, such as the diamond pattern stained glass, which will remain on the second and third floor rear windows. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist. And once you are a panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports this proposal and commends this sensitive restoration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to ask the applicants if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Sure. Salute.
Mhm.
So we appreciate, HTC and Friends of the Upper East Side, as well as the community board. I think we had really good discussions with Friends and with the community board. Certainly, I mean, there is a whole period of architecture in the teens and 20s where row houses, mansions, and the like were being redone. I think our position really starts in the same place with the Victorian Society. The workmanship that was done on the exterior of this building was not of the highest quality. What you see today is intact. That workmanship is intact as far as we know from the 1920s, certainly from the 1940s. The question of the style and pedigree of the building, all of the documentation that we have seen talks about Hunt as well as Leonard Locke, who was a designer, working on the interior with Pennington credited for the exterior. It's interesting that arts and crafts style designation report talks about it as modified neo-Spanish Renaissance style. I always have to go through that slowly because that might be the only example of modified neo-Spanish Renaissance style. I think it is true that there are details about this building that were that do give it its Spanish style, such as the front door, which is described, at least in Chris Gray's articles, as not original or not historic. It was created in the 1920s. And Chris Gray in his 1998 article really talks about the interior of this building and how the interior was used, the very lavish decoration that went on in the interior. And at the time he was writing that article, that entire interior was in the process of being removed, including a very grand iron stair at the base of the building. So I think that given the workmanship of the 1920s building, given the pedigree of the 1901 building, and that we are proposing to restore back to that design with very little in terms of compromise. We are taking the main entrance and dropping that down to grade. And as a result, we are adding a door onto the front of the building. And we are modifying, and as a result of that as well, we're modifying the windows on the side return at the base of the building. But by and large, this will be a restored limestone base of the building. And as I mentioned before, on the upper floors, most of the brickwork that is there on the upper floors dates to 1901, will be retained and reused in the new design. I did want to correct one thing that Friends said. They talked about retaining the decorative glass windows at the second floor at the rear. At the second and third floor, we are only proposing to retain the very decorative windows at the third floor on the rear.
Okay. All right, thank you. And just one quick question about the ornament above the doors and, even above the windows. And I know it's all to be in limestone. Is that going to be carved
Yes.
to match?
Yes. Not proposing cast stone or
As any kind of additive ornament? Okay. Commissioners, any other final questions? All right, so let's close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we have an interesting discussion ahead of us. This is, as you know, we have seen time and again on the Upper East Side. Many earlier buildings were redesigned in the early 20th century. That sometimes involved stripping the facade of ornament, and it sometimes meant adding ornament at either just the lower two floors or the whole facade. And it sometimes meant pushing out the facade entirely to the property line where a stoop once existed. And so these alterations in the early 20th century have traditionally been considered significant by the commission. And that is why this application is before us. I think most of the rest of this work is purely restorative to the 1901 period. There is a modification at the door to create an at-grade door entrance. And then at the rear, there is also the removal of some of the windows and the retention of some of the stained glass windows. And at the penthouse, they are pulling the penthouse forward. So, we have a little bit to talk about on the rear and on the roof, but I think the big fundamental question will be whether it is appropriate to remove the later 1920s facade and style and design for the 1901. The applicants have presented that the facade was, and we heard in testimony that the facade was executed poorly, and that much of the brick that's there is from the 1901 period. But of course, it did involve the new openings at the ground floor and the pent roof at the top. And just in terms of the commission's history, as the applicants have shown, we have approved modifying build facades that have a style in this historic district, and including a later 1920s style in ways that either go back to something earlier or result in sort of a hybrid of periods. And so I think we really handle these on a case-by-case basis, and I think we'll focus our comments on this particular design and the appropriateness of the restoration. So Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
There you go. Well, this is one of the fundamental things I think that the commission deals with in a kind of a philosophical way. I think it's incumbent that we each bring our own, why is this so loud? Our own critical judgments to the issue. Each case like this should be handled on its own rather than some blanket theory applied across the board. I'm thinking back in some of my firm's own work at Ellis Island, for instance. When we renovated, there was all sorts of additions and changes up through the 50s, and a determination was made. I'm not sure around this table, maybe it was at the federal level, to restore it back to 1912. So that meant ripping out all sorts of things that had been added over time, and some of it probably significant, but 1912 was determined to be the year of maximum, now I'll get closer, year of maximum immigration, I think, through the building. Has it gone entirely? Grand Central Terminal, again, one of our firm's most notable projects, I think, removal of all sorts of things that had been added, maybe you could say significantly over time, but we removed it in order to return it to more or less an original condition. So therefore, I look at this and I think, again, in this case, not in all cases, but in this case, I bring my own critical judgments, personal as they might be, different from others as it might be, that even the design of this mid-20s edition was maybe not at the highest level of arts and crafts, sort of stylized, but certainly the execution was way beneath standards. And I look at what's being proposed, and if the execution is as good as the renderings, and I think it can be, good architect, good staff on top of everything, as it's just been explained, it's not cast stone, it's real limestone that's being coming back. I can support the change again in this case. But I think the arguments, as Sarah has just said, have to always exist around this table on a case-by-case basis, because although this is a very fundamental theory of layering, it has to be applied very carefully and in each case, given the conditions. And I think the conditions here are such that the original design, although interesting, not the redesign, I should say, redesign, interesting, but not maybe of the first order. And the execution was definitely not of the first order. So therefore, why not go back and recreate the original? Anyway, that's my thought.
Thank you, Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, yeah, this is a somewhat, well, we see these, quite often, they returning to an original or as close as can be imagined to the original, whereas, there's been a significant interesting layer. For the reasons, just the stated by some of the testimony and also by Commissioner Bland, I think I very much agree with his position on this. And so I don't have a lot to add to that.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi.
I can appreciate the arguments on both sides. But I have to say that I happen to concur with Fred's argument.
Right, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I guess I'll go back and also talk about the rear. So I think it's fine for them to remove the fire escape. The one-story addition, I think, is appropriate. I'm glad that they're not doing any excavation. In terms of the penthouse, and the addition of the penthouse, I think it's not highly visible, especially given the context of the larger apartment buildings, so I can find that appropriate. And then in terms of the redesign, do you go back to 1901 versus the 1920s? And I agree with Commissioner Bland. I think that he made some very good points, and I agree with him, and I can find this appropriate.
Okay, and thank you for mentioning the rear yard addition and the rooftop addition. Commissioner Goldblum.
Thank you. I too am in agreement with Fred, basically. I think that first of all, as to the rationale for picking or allowing for this kind of, let's call it a creative recreation of the building as it was, I think that the reasons cited are acceptable. The relatively poor quality and the design is kind of an absence of design as opposed to the reimposition of a new design, which we often see. And when I think back on the kind of projects that were kind of redone in the 20s that we've allowed to be kind of dialed back, they're often replacements that have less kind of independent character than what they replaced. And that could certainly be said in this case. So I think that the idea of recreating the detailing is acceptable. However, I would say that the staff should work very closely with them to look at the detailing of it. A couple of things that I would just note. First of all, if you look at the historic building, one of the most, I would bet, important details was the fact that this exposed corner had a rather animated side facade, which you can still see kind of remaining ghosting in the Spanish version, with a series of, it looks like 4 ascending windows that followed along what was probably the internal stoop. Now, they may not need to replicate that, although if they did, I think that would be honest. But certainly something that considered how the facade turns the corner and how, that exposed corner is experienced as you come down the street, I think is probably a good idea. And how the stone jointing carries around, just things like that. Those should be carefully looked at with the staff. I think the other key thing here for the staff, it puts a lot of burden on them, is that, they replace the brick with brick that is a pretty good match, but clearly not good enough. So when it comes time to do it, the staff might require that the building be cleaned professionally, carefully, before the brick is selected, and that a mock-up be prepared for staff to review. Because if they botch it the second time, then the whole thing's kind of falls apart, if you ask me. It looked to me like the detailing of the bay window could probably be examined carefully as well. And also, it looked like the addition on the ground level at the back had a side that was stucco that faces onto this alleyway view. I think that's okay if it is not visible. If it is visible, I'd suggest they continue the beige brick all the way down.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I normally tend to side with try not, if it's old, trying to figure an older time to push back to is somewhat arbitrary. But in this case, I agree with Commissioner Bland that the renovations of the 20s were not the best design and were then done very poorly. And so, and that there seems to be some fairly good documentation of what was there before. So I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, I'm in agreement as well as looking at the testimony. And this is interesting for us, as Vice Chair Bland said correctly, is that, we, over the history of preservation, we're going to have choices. And when is the Kodak moment, for example? And I think in this case, it is appropriate given the inferior quality of the 1920s Spanish Renaissance detailing. And I think I can find it appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner. Okay, we made it around. All right. So I think we do have a consensus to approve. I'll go ahead and make this motion.
This motion doesn't work.
All right. Okay, so in the matter of docket number 25-01-1907, 53 East 77th Street in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness. This is a modified Neo-Spanish Renaissance style residence altered by Pleasance Pennington in 1926 to 27 from what was originally a Beaux-Arts style residence designed by Henry Rutgers Marshall and built in 1900 to 1901. This is an application to alter the primary and secondary facades, expand a rooftop addition, and construct a rear yard addition. And I recommend approval, finding that the original Beaux-Arts style design was a handsome and well-proportioned building, and the 1927 alteration that remains is not a particularly fine example of the Neo-Spanish Renaissance style, that the 1927 removal of certain features and patching with brick infill remains legible on the awkwardly proportioned facade, calling undue attention to itself as a building that underwent major facade alterations, that the proposed removal of brickwork and replacement with new limestone cladding, ornamentation, the reconfiguration of openings at the building's base, the installation of ironwork, and the replacement of windows with 1/1 double-hung wood windows, as well as removing the existing pitched tile roof and reintroducing the historic limestone balustrade, will bring the building closer to its original design, that the proposed carved limestone details will recreate the fine ornamentation of the historic facade, that the reconstructed balustrade will partially obscure the enlarged penthouse, that the existing penthouse the existing penthouse is visible obliquely from the southwest and moving its front facade forward by approximately 13 feet will not substantially alter the perceived massing of the building, that the enlarged penthouse massing will not be visible from directly across the street and will be moderately visible from oblique angles across East 77th Street and Madison Avenue to the southwest, that only a portion of the rear yard addition will be minimally visible through a narrow view corridor through a service drive, that the construction of a full lot rear addition will not remove or damage any significant architectural features on the rear of the building, that the block is highly built up and the addition will be located within a corner of the block where there are larger apartment buildings. Therefore, the work will not diminish central green space, that the most significant of the special leaded glass windows added in 1927 will be retained at the rear facade, and that the rear facade of the building will retain the scale and character of an individual row house. However, I do recommend that this is contingent upon the applicants working closely with the staff on all of the detailing for the restoration and recreation of elements, as well as final approval and review and approval of all material samples. So Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second.
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Lutfi,
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
It's approved. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 6, LPC 25-01748. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1378, lot 56, 726 Madison Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is a neo-Georgian style bank building designed by Morel Smith and built in 1932. And the application is to replace entrance infill and door surround shutters and special windows, enlarge a masonry opening, construct rooftop additions, enclose a light well, and install rooftop HVAC equipment.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Julie Rosen from Higgins Quaisbarth and Partners. We're the preservation consultants on the project. I'm joined today by my colleague Stapleberg, as well as Tim Mirren from Nelson, who's the project architect, James Cava from JP Morgan Chase, and Michelle DiCarlo and Dennis Poulos from JB&B. We're presenting this project today on behalf of JP Morgan Chase, who's the owner of the building. JP Morgan Chase is proposing an adaptive reuse of 726 Madison Avenue to convert the building to a meeting space and center for its clients, customers, and employees, which will include food and beverage use. The project proposal includes a range of repair work and modifications to the facades and roof to support this new use. 726 Madison is located on a corner lot, the southwest corner of Madison Avenue and East 64th Street in the southern portion of the Upper East Side Historic District. It was constructed in 1932 for the Bank of the Manhattan Company, which is actually a predecessor company to JP Morgan Chase. Morel Smith was the architect who designed this 3-story building in the neo-Georgian style. The photo on the left shows the building at the time of its construction, and the photo on the right is from the LPC Historic District designation in 1981. Starting here by looking at some existing conditions, on the left is an overall view of the building. It has 2 primary facades, one facing onto Madison Avenue, the other facing onto East 64th Street. The side facades of the 2 adjacent commercial buildings, both tan in color, rise up behind 726 Madison and form this tan-colored backdrop behind the buildings. I do want to point out that the neighboring building here on Madison was constructed in the mid-1990s. On the right, we have detailed views of each facade, Madison on the top, East 64th Street on the bottom. And just to point out a few features of the building, the main entrance is located on Madison Avenue, main access to the building located through the central entrance door. The building also features Flemish bond brickwork, marble lintels, and a band course, entrance surround and fan light, multi-light wood windows, wood shutters, a slate roof, and what the designation report calls a quote-unquote Chinese Chippendale roof railing. Looking more closely at the Madison Avenue entrance, the existing conditions include a wood entrance surround, a transom bar, a fan light, marble bases, and a marble threshold. The actual door, side lights, and that single transom are non-historic, and they likely date to either the late 1980s or the early 1990s. On 64th Street on the left is a detail of one window bay. This is at the ground floor. This is going to be converted to an egress door. And then we have other roof and window details on the right side of the slide. The building contains historic double-hung wood windows throughout, with shutters at the second floor only. The windows are largely 12/12. There are some 8/8s with profiled casings. The glazing is varied. There's some colored and wavy lights scattered amongst largely clear glazing. We have details for you in a couple slides. Although, as you can see from these photos, these window conditions, these glazing conditions are not very perceptible from the exterior. We also have some detailed photos of the balcony doors, side lights, and transom on 64th Street. This is located at the Juliet balcony at the second. So as I noted, the glazing within the windows varies quite a bit throughout the facades. As you can see in these annotated elevations at the bottom, over 40% of the double hung windows contain clear glazing only, indicating that these windows were likely replaced at some point. The other windows contain a mix of colored glass, wavy glass, and clear glazing, which is largely perceptible only from the interior of the building. The existing varied glazing also creates quite an irregular condition across the facades. Moving to the roof, the footprint is very, very small and open space is extremely limited. There is an existing elevator and stair bulkhead, the southwest corner of the roof. There's also a light well here, located against the west side. There were previously mechanical units set on platforms. You can see in this lower right photo, although these have already been removed in anticipation of the start of this project. The historic wood railing and non-historic pipe railing set inboard, neither of these are code compliant, are also visible in these photos. And I just want to point out again that the adjacent building lot line walls, tan in color, including these blind windows here at the Madison neighbor. Moving into the proposed scope of work, we have the existing Madison Avenue elevation on the left and the proposed elevation on the right. There is a significant amount of facade and roof repair work that is also proposed as part of this project. That includes cleaning, repairing, and repointing the brick facades, repairing marble elements, repainting the wood cornice, window surrounds, dormers, and historic roof railing, as well as repairing the slate roof in kind. The other modifications that we'll be presenting today are proposed to upgrade the building for its adaptive reuse. So these include replacement of the entrance door and surround on Madison, salvage and reinstallation of the historic fan light, replacement of the double hung windows and shutters, and installation of mechanical units and a glass guardrail at the roof. The project has been designed to bring the building up to current building and energy codes, and LEED certification is also being sought for the project. And these considerations have been particularly integral in the development of the window replacement and mechanical scopes of work. On 64th Street, the scope of work is largely the same as what I just described on Madison, but in addition, there is one ground floor window on this elevation that will be converted to an egress door. This is also to comply with code requirements for the new use, and then the infill at the balcony door will also be replaced. We have a proposed rendered view of the Madison Avenue elevation here, along with swatches surrounding it for the various materials and finishes that are proposed. These include Vermont marble for the new door surround, brass hardware for the shutters, and paint for the various facade and roof elements. And then a colorized elevation here of the proposed work on 64th Street, again with the same swatches. We've been thinking about this proposal for 726 Madison within the context of other recent projects in the Upper East Side Historic District, where small-scale bank buildings were also converted to new uses. So we have 4 examples shown here. They're all located on Madison Avenue. These buildings were all purpose-built bank buildings that have since been converted and are now utilized as retail spaces, art galleries. LPC reviewed these projects and approved various exterior modifications, particularly at entrances and the roofs, to support the new uses. We have existing door details here. These are matching the photos that I already reviewed. And getting into the proposed details here, just to take you through the proposal for the new entrance element by element. We are proposing a new Vermont marble surround that would be installed in place of the existing wood surround. The Vermont marble will match the existing marble and other elements on the building. And the details and the dimensions of the new marble will also match all of the details and dimensions of the wood. Additionally, the door threshold will be lowered by 2 inches to create an at-grade accessible entrance. Along with that, there will be a new marble threshold installed as well. For the door infill itself, the existing non-historic infill will be removed. Paneled wood doors, side lights, and transom bar will be installed with frosted glazing at the side lights. The historic fan light will be removed, salvaged, and reinstalled in its existing location, and a light box will be constructed behind with a small strip light fixture, and frosted film will be installed on the back side of the glazing. Finally, there will be a new plaque sign with small light fixture installed adjacent to the entrance. Historically, buildings of this type and period, we have 4 examples here of bank buildings, private club buildings. They often had stone entrance surrounds. We're showing just a selection here. They also had paneled entrance doors as common features as well. So we're looking at the new marble surround and the door design at 726, really intending to fit in with this historic context. And we have an existing view of the current door conditions on the left, and then the proposed rendered view on the right. On 64th Street, as I noted, one window will be converted to an egress door, and we have existing details here. So the window and the brick below will be removed to extend the masonry opening. And then there will also be a portion of the wrought iron fence and marble curb removed to allow for access from the sidewalk. Proposed details here. So within the enlarged masonry opening, this new wood egress door will be installed. The width of the opening is going to match the existing opening, just with that sill dropped. And then in addition, new sections of the wrought iron fence and marble curbs matching the existing will be installed, along with a new marble threshold. The egress door will maintain the rhythm of door and window infill at the base of the building and will not detract from its architectural character. LPC has approved similar installations in the past. 2 examples for you here: 909 Madison Avenue on the left, another bank conversion project where an existing window was converted to a door to serve as a secondary entrance. This was required for egress as part of the building conversion. At 706 Madison Avenue, there was historically a door on the side street elevation that had over time been converted to a window, and LPC approval was also sought for conversion back to a door, again to serve as egress for the new use. We have existing wood window details for you here. As I mentioned, the existing windows are wood double hungs. They're single glazed, and they are proposed for replacement due to performance and energy efficient reasons, but the decorative surrounds will be retained. The new windows will match the existing in material, configuration, profiles, details, dimensions, and finish. The new windows will be double glazed with clear glass and applied muttons with spacer bars, as you can see in the details here. The replacement will allow for a uniform window treatment across the facades and for the energy goals of the project to be met. At the second floor, new slatted wood shutters will be installed, painted black. Planter boxes are also proposed at the second floor, and these are being reviewed at staff level. Similarly, the balcony doors, side lights, and transoms will be replaced, and we have the existing details here and the proposed here. Again, the new infill will match the existing in material, configuration, profiles, details, dimensions, and finish. Similar to the double hung windows, the infill will be double glazed with clear glass and applied muttons with spacer bars. Transitioning to the roof scope, we have existing versus proposed axons here. I do want to emphasize the small roof area and the extremely limited open space for equipment, which is required for the new use. The open light well that's at the western portion of the roof will be infilled to add more roof area, although it's still quite limited. The existing stair and elevator bulkhead at the southwest corner will be enlarged in its existing location, and it has also been sized so as to not block the adjacent buildings. All of the mechanical equipment proposed for the roof has been specifically sized and located to meet the needs of the building and to comply with a variety of code requirements for access paths, maintenance clearances, and offsets from adjacent buildings. Locating the mechanical units on the roof also eliminates the need for louvers on the facades of this small scale building. Existing and proposed roof plans are shown here. The larger mechanical units and the bulkhead will be custom painted in tan color. And this is so that the units and the bulkhead blend with the side walls of the adjacent buildings. And it's only the smallest units along 64th Street that need to be white in color for manufacturing purposes. As I mentioned, the existing railings along the perimeter of the roof are not code compliant, and in order to address this, the historic railing will be maintained in its existing location, and the non-historic guardrail will be replaced with a new code compliant glass guardrail. A couple slides of existing and proposed sections. I'm happy to come back to these if anyone has questions. Did want to get to these existing and proposed railing details. Again, this is showing the retention of the historic railing with the new glass guardrail set back 1 inch behind the historic. This is the maximum possible offset before it encroaches on the required clearances that I mentioned for the mechanical units. Moving into our visibility studies, we have these laid out with our existing mock-up views on the left and proposed rendered views on the right. This is a view from the corner of 63rd Street and Madison. This is the furthest south we get from the building, where you just start to see what's happening on the roof and very limited visibility from this vantage point. Moving up Madison, we're now standing across the street from the building. The mechanical units do start to become visible. They are simple in design and massing, and as I mentioned, they're going to be custom colored in tan colors so that they blend with the surrounding context. As we can start to see in this view, they're going to be largely seen against this backdrop of the adjacent building side elevations, as well as taller buildings in the background. This is a view from the corner of 64th Street and Madison. So this is just east of 64th Street. Again, seeing the mechanical units in that larger context. As I noted, the finish will allow for some blending in with the background. It's also going to allow for contrast with the historic building itself, so that the building's defining features really do remain legible and separate from everything that's happening on the roof. We're now standing on 64th Street across from the building. Again, just seeing different units on the roof. We can also see that the new glass guardrail will be minimally visible behind and above the historic railing, but it will very much be a secondary feature to allow the historic railing to remain a clear and prominent feature of the building. Moving up Madison, this is a view between 64th and 65th Street. And finally ending at the corner of 65th and Madison, this is our last vantage point to the north, where you start to lose sight of the mechanical units. And ending on a rendering here of the proposed work. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, do we have questions, commissioners?
I think I
Yeah,
have
Vice Chair Bland.
a lot of original material is being replaced, windows, that sort of thing. I can kind of understand that, but why the entire entablature? I think I understand the entire entablature around the door. Why is that being replaced with something that looks pretty much like it?
Yeah, so before I hand it over to the architect to add a little bit more clarity, the intent really is a design feature, and it's meant as an upgrade to the building. We do have other historic marble elements on the building, all of the lintels are marble, the band course, as well as the Juliet balcony on 64th Street. So it's really intended to tie in the surround to the other marble elements on the building, and also to link it to that historic context that we see in buildings of the similar type and period. Tim, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No,
That's it. Okay.
And the enfrainment around the window on the second floor with the balcony, is that wood or is
The enfrainment itself is wood, yes.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
The shutters on the second floor are now white. And
correct.
you're showing them as black. What is the reasoning for that?
That's a design decision, to go along with the shutter replacement.
Do we have any historic record of what color they were?
As far as I'm aware, the shutters were a light color.
Thank you.
historically.
And yeah, and then if you're going to speak to the design choice of the color, maybe also speak to the design choice of louver versus a paneled shutter.
Sure. My name is Timothy Meyer and I'm with Nelson Architects for the architect of record for this project. So the shutters, the first part about the coloring, they have been repainted over time. In our research, we found several historic photos. In 1992, I believe they were also black. So in the 1930s, our original photos from 1930 show them white. They've been painted black previously. We also looked into the LPC's guidance on appropriate colorings based on time and context, and black is within that list of appropriate colors for shutters for this architectural style. Regarding the replacement of the shutters, it is a design decision. There are other projects of similar type and style that have the slided shutters as well. One being One Sutton Place, for example. So we did look around in New York City in the neighborhood to make sure we're not proposing something that's foreign to the language that we have here. We are maintaining the portions, the length and width, and there's a piece of historic hardware at the bottom, a little clasp that's preserved as well.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
I want to ask you some questions about the air conditioning. This seems to be a relatively petite building that has air conditioning on it of a size that I would associate with the multi-story office building or apartment building. Why the heck so much?
Sure. So it's largely being driven by the change in use of the building and the updated capacity requirements of the building, as well as changes to code. I would actually be happy to have the JVB team come up and they can provide a little bit more color for you if that would be helpful.
Sure.
Okay, just why don't you come up and just state your name or you speak.
Dennis Boulos with JVB Consulting Engineers, the MEP consultant.
Okay, so you've got three big units. One of them is 10 feet tall. I don't know the others, but then one of them is a little lower. And you said that their placement was inevitable and there was no other option. So you couldn't put any of these on top of the bulkhead, for instance. Why not?
So, on top of the bulkhead would also, I think, create more visibility, right?
Right,
It's a
but
tall-
it might be further back from the building's facade and it might blend in with the neighbor.
Several items that we've coordinated at length with the architect and with the owner in terms of access requirements for the units, maintenance.
And the
just
bulkhead
code-
doesn't meet that requirement?
The code clearance is also required from lot lines.
And all three
require
of
that
these,
Exhaust at least 10 feet from those lot lines. So putting it against the bulkhead would also allow.
and is the intake on one end or on all four ends?
Correct. The intake is on one end. It's actually for the top unit, I see the image you're looking at, but
Right.
the unit on the west side of the roof, the intake is on the center of the roof as well as the.
Right.
large-
So could you take the kitchen makeup air handling unit and put it on top of the roof and it would still be 10 feet away from this neighbor? Would it be 10 feet away from that neighbor? It looks like it might be.
Anything on top of the bulkhead would obstruct the neighbor's windows, which was something we were making a big effort.
And you said that part of the decision to do this was to avoid putting louvers in the windows. What if you did put louvers in the windows? What could you eliminate here?
I think another key, besides louvers and the impact of the facade and the language of the facade,
Yeah.
another big impact is the program area within the building as well, right? The significant size of the equipment, the heights and the airflow requirements would, it'd be detrimental to the function of the building.
I assume this is all because there's some kind of food service element to this, because two out of the three here are kitchen related. So why is this so darn big when every restaurant in New York has a kitchen? And they don't have units, 10-foot high units for them. How'd they do it?
I mean, it's dependent on the size of the kitchen, of course, too, right?
Right.
It's a pretty sizable program here.
Uh-huh.
And just on the extent of the function, right, is the makeup air and the exhaust requirements.
So this thing is so much bigger than a typical restaurant that it needs to have a two van-sized units on the roof.
It is the needs of the program. That's
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Okay, let's move to public testimony. Is there anyone in the room who'd like to speak on this item? All right, so noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised in our attendees list. The first we'll be hearing from is Zainab Turan from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Turan, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello again, Commissioners. Zainab Turan speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends of the Upper East Side supports a part of this application. On the Madison Avenue facade, we find a new decorative marble door entry, stylistically appropriate. We support replacing the existing window with the new egress door on the 64th Street facade to ensure compliance with the required certificate of occupancy. The rooftop additions, on the other hand, are bulky and visually obtrusive. They must be substantially minimalized in scale. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from John Graham from the Victorian Society, New York. John Graham, I've promoted you to panelist. And once you have been made panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you. Hello, John Graham, are you with us?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. We wondered why a branch bank would be built in this style rather than the more solidly monumental neoclassical style typical of banks of this period. Daytonian in Manhattan explains why this branch bank is pretending to be an elegant 18th century townhouse. The design was precisely to the taste of Bank of Manhattan Company Vice President Raymond E. Jones, who also served as treasurer and director of the Museum of the City of New York. The Georgian Revival Museum was completed just before this branch bank. The bank had been founded in 1799, and Jones set out to replicate the best of that period's design. The first floor interiors were a step back into an elegant Georgian mansion. Fluted columns, scenic wallpaper, and a sweeping curved staircase caught the period perfectly. The illusion was carried through to the teller's desks, where the expected cages were replaced with open, face-to-face counters. At the exterior, the architect's attention to period detail extended even to the working wrought iron shutter dogs on the upper floors. Rippled glass panes were used to simulate age. Splayed lintels, slate roof tiles, a Chinese Chippendale roof railing, Flemish bond brickwork, and a delightful second-floor balcony on 64th Street added to the illusion. We hope the new occupants will treat these special interiors kindly, but the Commission can and should require that the nearly intact exterior be treated with respect. That means the original paneled shutters, with their highly visible wrought iron hardware, including shutter dogs, hinges, and long bolts, should remain and be restored and continue to be painted white. Listen to the architectural presentation just now. The change in design from paneled to louvered at the shutters and the color was described as an arbitrary design decision. When the design and color of original historic features is well documented, this type of change is not appropriate. The original special multi-light windows with their wavy glass, a deliberate decision when used in 1933, should be restored. Interior storm windows are a possibility. If the windows must be remade, a custom design incorporating restoration glass with true divided lights on the outside and secondary glazing inside is an option. The proposed front door, replacing a modern one, is stylistically appropriate. The new side door will affect this facade symmetry. However, because this is a side facade and the symmetry is already compromised by the rear wing, we feel it's an appropriate change. It maintains all the masonry trim and requires the loss of only a small amount of brick. The rooftop additions are far too large and visible. They must be considerably reduced. Perhaps some of the bulk can be pushed to the far interior corner, thus appearing less connected to this building. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the proposed rooftop mechanicals too highly visible at this location and believes that the building's existing shutters should remain or be replaced in kind. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, so I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Great, thank you very much. I'll begin by responding to some of the comments we received from the Victorian Society about the window replacement. So as was described to you, there is quite a bit of inconsistency in the existing window conditions. Just over 40% of the windows we believe to have already been replaced and only contain clear glazing. They do not contain any of the special glazing. So in an effort to meet the various energy needs of the building, we are proposing full replacement of the windows for continuity amongst the building, and also again to meet all of energy code and LEED requirements. In addition, we have discussed storm windows internally. There are a number of environmental and maintenance concerns that would be introduced at this building envelope concerns if the windows were to be retained. Going to the rooftop scope, just to reiterate some of what we've already discussed. The code requirements, energy considerations, use are all driving the plan for the mechanical units. There have been various iterations studied by the team to arrive at this proposal, which is really the most optimized proposal for, again, not only meeting all of those needs, but also for minimizing visibility as much as possible. And overall, the new units really are absolutely essential to support the new use of the building. They will be finished, as I mentioned, in a custom tan color, which will help them blend into the backdrop of not only the adjacent building side facades, but also the larger building context around it, and will allow them to read as separate elements from the historic building. So you're always still reading the historic building in its existing and historic condition. I also want to emphasize the very small roof area that the team has to work with in terms of locating the units. And that's it. Is there anything else? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions on this one? All right, let's close the hearing and begin our discussion. Commissioner Lutfi, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Master, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We'll begin our discussion, and there are a number of components, and maybe a way to think about it are sort of the code related to allow for a new use, and then some design choices that have been made. And so we have, I think, sort of in the code related category, we have a proposal for mechanical equipment on the roof that is visible because the building is quite small, and they've painted it out to try to blend with the wall behind. They are also proposing to convert a window to a door to provide egress on the side facade. And then the other aspects of the project include window replacement with new windows that would be double glazed instead of single glazed, with an applied munting grid and spacer bars in between, but otherwise would match the historic configuration operation. materials and details. And with respect to the glazing, it sounds like 40% of the windows already have clear glass. Then there's the proposal to change the paneled painted paneled shutters with a black painted louvered shutter. And then the proposal to replace the door surround and the door. The door surround would match the historic wooden framement, but would be executed in marble. And then the proposed door would incorporate the historic fan light, but otherwise be a modern door. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you start this one?
Sure. I think that the list of modifications to the skin of the building that you just described, the shutters, the door, the windows, for me, are all acceptable. The building's an ersatz historical building, any way that was put up in 1932. It's a Williamsburg extract, and Virginia, not Brooklyn. So I think that the modifications are certainly in the spirit of the ersatz architectural style that it was intended at the outset, and I think that the changes are modest and reasonable. Roof, no way. I mean, the top floor of the building is one big kitchen, so you have a kitchen that's the size of half the entire building volume. They're, God bless them, I guess the people at Chase eat a lot or eat a lot of stuff. That's not our purview. But I do note that the floor to floor height on the third floor is 14 feet, I think, which is very, very baronial for a kitchen. I mean, I'm not a mechanical engineer, and I certainly don't question their mechanical engineers' qualifications, but I don't think we've ever approved this quantity of visible AC equipment this close to the street on any building. I mean, a hospital. I don't remember us ever approving such extensively visible equipment. And I think that it has to be reworked. I think that they can take some of the equipment and put it inside. Louvers, especially on the west-facing gable roof, I think would be great. You have that kind of on the return where the building turns the corner on 64th, that faces west, I think it is. That could be louvered. Windows could be louvered. The roof could be louvered. There's a setback at the front of the building that could be put. They could put a grate in it and dig a foundation extension that wouldn't be a vault, that could give them more fresh air at the ground level if that's acceptable to code. I think there are lots of, they could drop the ceiling down on the third floor and try to sink these things in, which would be helpful at least for some of the less tall units. But this quantity of highly visible, beige is nice, but it doesn't make it go away. And I've seen lots of air conditioning units, and if you parked a beige minivan up on the roof, I think you'd notice it. It's going to be noticeable. So I think it has to be reworked.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Large measure, I agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I'd keep the white shutters just because they do seem to be historic, and it seems to be somewhat arbitrary to change them. I understand that. I also want to compliment you in considering, and I hope you will do LEED certification, because that is a good thing, and making as energy efficient as possible a building is a good thing. Which is why I don't have a problem with replacing all the windows with the windows. I think it's got to be possible to reduce the mechanical equipment. And I would ask you to work with staff to look at all the limitations and all the requirements, but you need to push the mechanical engineer to make it smaller and figure out ways to reduce the bulk, because even if it's painted tan to begin with, after a few years in New York, it'll be gray, and it will be noticeable, and it is big, and it seems very big for the size of the building. So with that, I'd have them work with staff to resolve those issues.
Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, it's quite obviously the rooftop units need to be studied with the staff. I'm glad the commissioner mentioned about the color of the shutter. I would defer that to the staff because, you know, in my opinion, in looking at the how nice this front proportion elevation is, that the dark shutters seem to recede into the background. So I don't know if it's historically more appropriate to have white shutters, or it is a darker shutter is appropriate. So that's my only comment.
Vice Chair Bland.
I've always enjoyed these anomalies on Madison Avenue, and I was initially dismayed by all the changes of fabric, but coming to believe the Williamsburg aspect of this little piece of Virginia, I believe that maybe it's okay to make the changes. So I think I'm in Commissioner Goldblum's camp entirely, and others as well now, that the issue is the top of the building. Again, I don't think it's our job to say how you do it. But dropping might be good if that can work. Dropping the making a well at the top. Is geothermal not possible? Maybe not. But anyway, look at all these things. It just this is an inappropriate application because of the top now, and for me, only the top.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I generally support this adaptive reuse. To the extent the rooftop accretions can be reduced, certainly they should be. And with regard to I think the one thing I'd like to see it's a lot of historic fabric that's being removed. And I would like them to work with the staff and try to preserve and repair whatever historic fabric is feasible, makes sense here. Obviously, if it needs to be replaced, it needs to be replaced. But if there is an opportunity to preserve some of it, I think given the amount that's being removed, that would be reasonable.
Okay, Commissioner Lutfi.
I'm pretty much aligned with what has been said before. I'm okay with replacing the entrance, infill, the door surround. I happen to feel that the original shutters, if they're still in good condition, should be retained, and if they're not, to replace them in kind. And I think I fall into the white camp in terms of the shutters. And I'm okay with them framing around the doors, and I mean, how could, the windows. I mean, I really believe there's no question that they have to replace for energy efficiency purposes, and they shouldn't have to retain 40% of the windows and put something behind them. It's just too much. And and they should be working to reduce. I mean, you can see the proportions are all in terms of the building itself. There's so much bulk on the roof that they need to do something to reduce the amount and the visibility of the equipment, the visibility.
Okay. Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I like the fact that they're going to replace the door surround with marble rather than wood. I think that actually adds a lot. I think that the window replacement is appropriate, given that 40% have already been replaced. I think that the color choice, whether it's black or white, is more of a design decision, so I leave it up to the applicant. I think that the converting on the side, the window to the door is also appropriate and necessary for egress. And in terms of the mechanical equipment, I agree with the other commissioners that it should be restudied.
Okay. All right. So I think that generally speaking, there is actually a lot of support for a number of the changes that you want to make. I think that certainly the rooftop mechanical equipment needs to be restudied, and we'll ask you to look at that and explore your options. I know you said you did go through a series of iterations already, so maybe you can work with the staff on those and come back with a solution to us. For us, and then we've heard some comments about the shutters, so that may be something for you to rethink, revisit in your analysis of the sort of overall program and design choices. But I think it's really the rooftop mechanical equipment that's the most important to restudy. So we'll take no action, and we'll have you back as soon as we are ready. And we'll move to item number 7.
Public hearing item number 7 is LPC 24-10093. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1495, lot 33. 990 Park Avenue, aka 52 to 72 East 84th Street, the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola, individual landmark, also in the Park Avenue Historic District. This is a Renaissance Revival style church building designed by Schickel and Ditmars and built in 1895 to 1900, incorporating a foundation and basement from a previous building designed by William Schickel and Company and built in 1884 to 86. And the application is to replace doors, alter handrails, stairs, and historic fencing, and modify the areaway platform.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Nick Doyle from Madison Doyle Partners. And with me is my associate Piers Ellis. We're here for St. Ignatius Loyola. In full disclosure, I've been a parishioner since 78. I've been working on the building since close to 30 years. We've been in front of the commission a number of times with different projects, and we're happy to be presenting today. Next. Obviously, it's in the Park Avenue district, but it's an individual landmark. Just jumping, it was a Schickel and Ditmars building. I love the description. It's very tricky to describe the building, both the exterior and the interior, but Elliot Walensky in the first AIA guide called it Vignola with a German accent, and that was a great fun because it's a Jesuit church and it was very much Vignola. This street view project site is on the left. You can see it's a pretty important ensemble of the Loyola School on the left, the Rectory building, which was sort of a Gothic, almost collegiate Gothic, which is what the foundations of the corner church of St. Ignatius Loyola was started as. And you can still see that built, but that was changed after the Jesuits took it over and changed the architecture. This is the facade that we're talking about, namely the center door, which right now the big bronze doors are sliding doors that go back and forth. The side doors are hinged and open up. The large doors in the center broke. The one on the right has been seriously damaged. Let me bring it back. And what we did at staff level, we did a lot of investigation, and Metalworks has been contracted to repair the bearings underneath. We're going to do that, the one broken bearing, and the church agreed to do all the bearings on those sliding doors while we have the doors lifted up, and which is good news because then hopefully there will be another 120 years before they have to look at that again. So what we're going to focus on today are the interior doors, which were The center door was set up in, at the time, a pretty ingenious way. And that was before that center railing was in, to allow for opening, like almost a bifold door, to open it up wide enough for coffins and for weddings. And the doors have become, they're very old, and they have been, one of them is, one on the right in the central door is broken and cannot really be opened, so they go in sideways with coffin, and the weddings get a little awkward when you come out. Church. So this is an interior photograph of those doors. You can see what I meant about the two panels that I showed on the plan, and the exterior, the bronze doors, sliding doors open. That typically you would just pull open the center door. This two center doors and the side panels remain fixed and have been left pretty much in position because the hinges are not working. So what we're proposing on that center door is, you can see it's been carefully measured on the left, and on the right we're we're proposing to do a bronze frame door with a lot narrower frame. The pastor and the congregation are really pushing to have more of a sense of when the bronze doors are open, that you can at least see into the church from the street. Frankly, you're not looking down an aisle, but you're looking up at the ceiling, which is an incredibly rich architecture in itself. That's a rendering of the existing door and what we're proposing.
Move over a little, Fred.
The interior, what was really governing a lot was the work on the top, both the stained glass, art glass, and the frame, bronze framing. So there was no attempt to alter anything but the opening of the door itself. You can see the shot from the interior and then the exterior rendering. What we're proposing in addition is to take that motif of the crosshatch above and bring it down into in a fritted glass on the actual glazed opening, just to baffle it a little bit. And the glass, unfortunately, in this day and time, is a ballistic glass that's been pretty carefully integrated and structurally analyzed to sit into that frame. It doesn't have any real visual impact. It's not any more glary or different than normal glass, but it is fairly heavy. And these are the side doors, which we're asking in the same proposal. These are the hinge doors that we would, again, measure left and right, existing and proposed. And rendering of these. You can see the fritted glass, that's about a 75% frit. Interior shots of both sides. Now, just one awkward thing which happens in New York buildings and older buildings in general, when you have a door that opens out and the top step is right at the front, it's almost it's crazy to watch people trying to get into the church, because you step up, you start to open the door, and then you go back a step and pull yourself up on the door. What we looked at, and it was actually fortuitous, you can see where that new handrail had been, not new, it's been there maybe 60 years, but in the center. What we propose is putting another step, another piece of stone in there to extend the top landing just enough to be able to stand and open the door. We've been working a lot with the stone on this building, on Deer Isle granite on another project. And we've got, what we're pretty convinced is, or we are convinced it's going to be a total match. When dimensionally, there's nothing out of the ordinary. It's in the same cadence as the steps, same height and depth. Area that appears as outlining the rose color is that where that stone would slip in. And as an aside, because in that first image of the whole building, let me go here. This is some of the stone sampling we've been doing with Deer Isle, and the sample of the glass that shows it opaque. It's just the ballistic glass sample, but that is again pretty piece. If I can go back for a second to the overall, I think an important. We'll be in front of staff, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, to talk about, they're going to clean the facades of the building, which haven't been done in 35 years exact. So that will make a big difference in the steps, which look pretty grimy now, will be also highlighted. And just mention the original building. This was before Grand Central and the whole train tracks had been reset. So this was moved back. That's why it's so steep. And then when we put in the handicap access on the side of the elevator, some of you were here for that hearing, that has worked out very well because of it. Now, maybe Commissioner, I should ask, the next portion of this was the so-called rubbish work. Should I go into that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The second part of this, on the northern side of the building, over on the left in that rose-colored area, I might ask, here's to join me on this. The new rule, the new city rules are coming into effect today. Close the garbage, and as someone at the community board said, which approved it, by the way, they said in 30 years we've been talking about garbage in the Upper East Side of the Historic District. Let's just finish this off. But again, it's down in that corner on Park Avenue. This is, we're standing up by the school, looking down. That's Regis High School on the left, and that handicap entrance, and the rose color is the handicap, rubbish area. Notice I'm saying rubbish, not garbage. This was the handicap entrance, which has been approved, and then the elevator, and that's the area of work. You can see now often what happens, we've got the covered cans, but a lot of debris is kept there. The recyclables, what we're proposing is to elevate the platform up to the street level, and you can see that the orange area here, platform come up, where we could put the cans up there and keep all the bag material down below. It's very tricky because it's not like an apartment building where you have a more or less full-time staff. We have to be coordinated with the sanitation department. Has to be exact time, because it's pretty rigorous. So you get a lot of time. Here's
good afternoon. My name is Piers Ellis.
Yeah, we're on Zoom and you can only hear.
Hello, good afternoon. As I was saying, the platform we're asking for is an additional platform above the existing garbage containers. That would allow for more containerization of the rubbish. So there wouldn't be the bags, the loose bags that are seen there. So we would be putting a metal grating and salvaging the existing fence and moving it to enlarge the areaway. In total, this would be 8 feet by 10 feet of grating and 6'9" and 10 feet. A new gate would have to be made, but this would be made from salvaged iron gates that is there already, and we would just be adding a hinge, a locking system as well.
And we did the same design on the school to the right, which is not in the district, not marked, but same things.
We would be using similar product as this rectangular mesh grating, galvanized, of course, and so the completely weather resistant.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have questions, commissioners? On the front entry doors or the modification to the areaway on the side? All right, let's see if we have public testimony, and I'll note that there is no one in the room to testify on this item, so I will turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of remote participants with their hands raised. The first we'll be hearing from is John Graham from the Victorian Society in New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And once you rejoin as a panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. We must admit we were initially confused by the proposed alterations to the inner doors at the 3 Park Avenue entrances to 990 Park Avenue. Each of these entrances has 2 sets of doors. The outer set are massive bronze doors which either slide into pockets at the central opening or are hinged to lie flat against the side of the door surround when open. The inner doors are hinged bronze finished metal and plain glass. Above the inner doors, there are historic upper and lower glass transoms with either rectangular panes or stained glass. The doors appear to be replacements simply detailed in a way which is totally unobtrusive when seen in conjunction with the lavish detailing of the rest of the church. The proposed inner doors are also metal and glass with narrow frames allowing for larger areas of glass. It's the design and type of glass which we question. The glass is to be attack-resistant rated glass with a ceramic frit design, which will obscure views into the church. We find this choice unacceptable. The ceramic frit design will be seen at eye level, exactly where it will draw the eye away from the historic features of the entrances. The grid design is used in metalwork at the church, but isn't used in the historic transoms directly above the new doors. Finally, we've often testified against a proposal where applicants create the appearance of Fortress New York at entrances to buildings. We find it especially disturbing to see a church on Park Avenue restrict the view into the building at all the major entrances. The existing bronze doors appear to offer a high level of security. We'll also note that we looked at the website of the manufacturer that the applicants are proposing to use for the glass, Krista Curva. The website brags about the many types of glass they offer, including bronze and blue and green and clear glass, which they seem to find remarkably clear. We strongly urge the use of glass without this distracting frit pattern. We support the proposed changes to the landing at the main entrance, central entrance, and handrail facing Park Avenue, and to the changes to the East 84th Street entrance, finding that the work will not destroy any significant amount of historic material and will be unobtrusive, seen in conjunction with the remarkable details which are a hallmark of this structure. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Zainab Turan from the Friends of the Upper East Side. Zainab Turan, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. Zainab Turan here speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. Friends Preservation Committee does not oppose the replacement of the inner central swing doors and side doors with slimmer bronze profiles, featuring ballasting glazing. This modification aligns with the existing aesthetic of the church's entryway. Additionally, we believe that installation of a rectangular bar grating platform for garbage storage is essential for maintaining sanitation. We do not object to the removal of the existing fence and its relocation to the side of the platform either. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we'll be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports the majority of the work proposed here, but finds the proposed exterior doors inappropriately glassy. We believe they should retain more solidity as existing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Thank you. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments, which were largely supportive, but there was one comment about the frit and then another about the thickness of the stiles on the doors.
The comment about the interior of the church, it is a stunning, beautiful interior, but the majority of what you see is the ceiling. And when you're trying it, and it's sort of an amorphous, it's very highly decorated and gilt and well lit. And the frit was really just to prevent like a lot of, frankly, the maintenance on the doors on busy Sunday or any given day, but also visually, we thought it was an interesting counterpoint to the issue of a lot of glass. And I bring up the St. Patrick's Cathedral and a lot of other churches, and St. Bart's is pressing us right now about the same kind of detail. So that was part of the response.
Okay. Any final questions, commissioners? Okay. All right, I think we'll move to our discussion then. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that
Second.
motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we have work at the front, which is to replace the inner doors at the 3 entries with new bronze frame doors with fritted glass. And then at the entrance on the side, East 84th Street side of the building, to modify the areaway, create a metal platform to help containerize the rubbish, and alter the fence to create a gate to provide access to that platform. Vice Chair Bland, would you take this one?
Sure.
I just want to note also extraneous to the subject at hand a little bit, but this is one of my favorite church interiors in New York. It's an extraordinary, I like to think of it as an escape to Rome if you didn't have time or money to get yourself there. But it's not really Rome exactly inside. I'm not sure what it is, but it's certainly an impressive place. And I make every attempt to make a 5-minute sidebar to get there when I'm in that neighborhood. And I will say, once I saw Jackie Kennedy going in there, that was her church, and I saw her walking up those steps. I was very, very pleased to see that. Be that as it may, I think these changes that are being suggested are quite appropriate, and as the architect has just stated, not unlike those changes that have been made at many of other important churches in New York City. The change of that step I completely understand and have spent many a time, not just here, but other places where that step is coexistent with the doorway, which is a terrible tripping hazard too on the other way. It's hard to open the door going in, but it's also very easy to trip going out. So this is a very smart thing to be doing. And to corral the rubbish in the way that you're doing, I think is a very smart move too. So all in all, a great series of minute changes to an extraordinary building.
Thank you. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I think the changes are minimal and appropriate and provide for accessibility, and I can approve it as it is. Thank you.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Agree. I think these changes make a lot of sense. I think the doors harmonize very well with the architecture and the surround. And, I certainly think that the extending the stone makes sense on the top step, and just modifying that railing just a bit makes sense. And then who could argue with a proper platform for garbage? And then the work on the new gate, also will harmonize with the surrounding fence. I can approve this.
Okay. Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I agree with the other commissioners. It's appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Agreed.
And Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree. I'd also say, as someone who spent a good hunk of my career dealing with trash, this is a nice solution. And recognizing it and dealing with it is important.
That sounds like a big story we need to hear.
You want me to put you to sleep someday?
Commissioner Chen.
Would you like me to add on the rodent issues?
Yeah.
But no, I agree with the rest of the commissioner. I think that the front step is an ingenious way to solve a problem, a practical problem.
Okay, great. So I think we have a consensus to approve. Commissioner Bland, would you make the motion?
I will. In the matter of 990 Park Avenue, also known as 52 to 72 East 84th Street, the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola, an individual landmark in the Park Avenue Historic District. This is an application to replace doors, alter handrails, stairs, and historic fencing, and modify the area platform. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details of this individual landmark are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Park Avenue Historic District. I recommend approval, noting that the proposed work will not eliminate or damage any significant architectural features, that the bronze doors to be removed are not historic, and that the thinner frames increasing glazing and pattern fritted glazing of the new bronze doors will harmonize with the thinner bronze elements within the entrance assemblies and the Roman latticework pattern at the central entrance transom, and will increase the visibility from the public thoroughfares into the ornate interior. That the design, materials, and details of the entrance alterations reflect the architectural language of the Renaissance Revival style church, that the 8-inch deep extension of the central entranceway's upper granite step with matching granite to create a landing will not be perceptible from the street, that the modifications to the central bronze handrail involve removing only a small section and will be harmonious with the other handrails at the building, that installing a black painted metal platform at the 84th Street areaway to align with the grade of the sidewalk will not diminish the building's relationship to the street, and the platform will have minimal attachment points to the granite facade of the raised basement, that the proposed new gate will be well integrated with the historic ironwork, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of this individual landmark or the Park Avenue Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that
Second.
motion? Okay, Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Lutfi, Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next and final item.
All right, last item of the day is public hearing item number 8, LPC 25-00279, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, block 1973, lot 1, 1160 Amsterdam Avenue, St. Paul's Chapel, individual landmark. This is a Byzantine-style chapel building with Italian Renaissance elements designed by Howells and Stokes and built in 1904 to 07. The application is to alter the front portico and install a ramp.
Hi, Marty Griggs from Walton Melvin Architect, Krista from Sir Benson Landscape Architect. So this project is primarily to provide better accessibility to this landmark building. We started the project by looking at kind of the campus plan and the history of the campus plan in this area, as everyone was aware. McKinney White master plan from 1890s, mid 1890s. And we thought there was a couple of things that they did that were kind of big moves. One was creating the 150 landmark platform. It's kind of the platform of the upper campus and that elevation and kind of the way they modified the grade to make that work. We thought was important. And then there's a symmetry with the hierarchy of domes, kind of working through low library to St. Paul's, which is the later building, and also Earl Hall on the other side. So that we thought those were all important things. St. Paul's itself was built in 1907. Howell and Stokes, it's the only building on the main campus of that time period that wasn't McKinney White. There's actually some really interesting letters between the two of them about that, but that's a whole nother interesting story. But so it, it is though there is a discussion with McKinney White building and kind of the library. And it has a certain amount of kind of deference in terms of material and how that operates. So obviously that over time things have changed a bit, right? So there's been a series of other master plans that happened at Columbia. Madison Plaza came across and bridged Amsterdam Avenue and kind of changed the nature of that. But our feeling was really that there's been a slow development and that really the central part of the campus really has maintained its kind of historic property and its historic configuration. And we're trying, we're very kind of sensitive to that idea and how do we give a consistent experience for all users while kind of trying to maintain that historic character. One of the things that I think is interesting about this area, right, is that originally there were kind of cloisters around these meeting halls of both Earl Hall and St. Paul's Chapel. The only one that was really kind of enclosed completely was the one by Avery. The rest never quite completed that. Interesting. So, in terms of our kind of the context, that larger context, going down to kind of our smaller context, we're looking at kind of this is a main secondary access to the campus. We really think that that's important. We're actually, while what we're focusing on for the hearing is the actual building, Columbia is interested in improving the pathways around this. So our review is bigger than just the portico, which we're going to be focusing on today. Like as I said before, there's one of the original courtyards from around there. There's also some gates in that courtyard that are from a church downtown, the Dutch church downtown, which were actually moved up. It was actually from the second location of Columbia was where they used to have graduations, which I thought was just a nice touch to that area. And so this is really our goals for our project, right? Is to provide a similar experience in terms of mobility, regardless of mobility. And so that people can kind of experience the way that you enter the building in a similar manner. to honor kind of the master plan and the original idea of this important area of the campus. And then stick within the materiality of what we have at the building already. And then deal with some of the other issues that we have with drainage patterns and some heaving and issues with kind of improving the longevity of the building picture. So this gives you some idea of that kind of the area that we're really talking about, right? Is the interface is really the portico of the building itself. There's obviously an interface that we have with the portico that we're going to be dealing with, which is the plaza, which technically would be outside of LPC's purview, but it's really something that needs to be integrated with the work that we're doing. So we started kind of by doing a conditions assessment. This is in the portico. It's in very bad shape. The paving has a mosaic of marble, serpentine, and dolomitic limestone. That's quite beautiful, but it's seen better days. It's over a vault. We did a few probes of areas to kind of determine what we have. We have a coal tar system underneath it. It's actually doing well with the waterproofing, but the way that the whole thing was originally drained, it's staying wet. We're pretty sure that what we have is heaving from freeze thaw. So one of the important things that we're doing as part of this job is to deal with that and get that water out. It's kind of a technical issue, but there's no leaking downstairs because of the coal tar, but we're going to end up having to deal with that waterproofing system. Again, a better idea of kind of the paving and the condition that it is now. That issue has extended into the kind of the granite steps. We're seeing heaving there that's been patched with cementitious patching to prevent tripping hazards, but then causing water decline, more freeze thaw and other issues like that. This just gives you some idea of kind of some of the issues we have with heaving at the brick paving areas. Right now, there's no drains in this area, and there's a very low slope, so it's all percolation drainage, which hasn't been working that well. And so this gives you an idea of kind of, this is where we looked at a bunch of different options. We'll look at the end, and we were really looking for a way to make sure that everyone kind of has a similar approach to the building, that you're not kind of coming at it from the side, you're coming in from the front, that if you're with somebody who's disabled or has some issues with mobility, that you're able to kind of experience it the same way and they don't have to go around the corner. So that was really important to us. What we wanted to do was, when you started to kind of look at the elevation change that we had to deal with, the ramps were just getting too long. And so that what we're looking to do is to address some of our drainage issues by raising the plaza slightly, and then being able to minimize the length of our ramps and to work kind of through that. So this gives you an idea. On the left is what's existing with the long ramp that you saw in the other photos, and on the right is the new ramp. And then this is again existing and proposed, the old ramp, the new ramp, and the stair with the new handrail. We wanted to provide a handrail at least in one location for people that would want to be using it. And then straight on deal with that. This is just a grading plan showing some of the other issues where we're trying to get accessible slopes and things like that as part of the grading modifications. And this is really the trade-off, right? In terms of providing better accessibility and keeping people's experience the same, but we're going to lose a little bit of height on the platform. We want to keep the stairs, so we have some height elevation change, but it's really kind of the trade-off. And then this is just we started to work through. We're looking to salvage as much of the portico paving as we can. We've got some pretty good matches on the stone, so there's some fading from the sun in different areas depending on how it's exposed to us. This is just what we're looking to do there. Again, going back with bronze railings, trying to keep this simple and as minimal as we can, but within the context of kind of the historic fabric that we have. Just some matching stone.
All right, thank you. Any questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
So, a couple of questions. How are you fixing the heaving in the porch? Are you gonna leave the coal tar, or are you just gonna drain through it, or?
So we can't,
Take the
we
whole thing
can't
out.
fix full tar anymore, right? It's not legal anymore. So
Right.
we're gonna have to put a new system. We're gonna do.
Are the vaults, but the vaults are gonna stay?
The vaults are staying.
Okay.
We will actually. We're looking at, the vaults
Okay.
will stay, changing the pitch at the vaults so we can get the water off. Going with a reinforced liquid membrane most likely. And then a drainage system under that, and then a secondary paving system.
And for the stone mosaic kind of thing up on the porch, is that gonna be rebuilt to the original design? You're gonna
Yeah.
keep the old broken stuff?
So
or-
we're gonna remove all of that. We're gonna have to, right? We're gonna have to go through and catalog it. We've already started naming drawings for individual pieces. So everything that's sound, we will survey, basically have the contractor take out, name it, ID where it goes, and go through a process of kind of evaluating each individual piece. Because we are gonna lose more than what's been lost.
And in terms of the floor plan at the plaza, how far back is the brick advancing over what it was before? In other words, now it's at the second step. It used to be at the fourth step. So that's is that like how much?
So
16
we're
inches or
pulling the
something?
landing out, so we're actually not, in terms of
Oh.
the amount of granite that you have.
Right.
It's gonna be the same, it comes to the same location.
Okay.
We're just pulling it out, forward, basically.
So all the granite that you see from the columns forward is new.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thanks. And is the piece size about the same in terms of the width of each piece?
Yes, in terms of the width, but yeah.
Thank you.
All right, great. Other questions? All right, let's see if we have any testimony. I'm going to turn it over to Gregory as we have no one present in the hearing room to testify, and we'll see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one remote participant with their hand raised, that being John Graham from the Victorian Society, New York. John Graham, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. And once you've been made panelist, please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Graham for the Victorian Society in New York. The Victorian Society supports the proposed changes to increase accessibility to St. Paul's Chapel. We'll note that sloping the historic brick terrace in front of the chapel will diminish the importance of the building's stone base, but we believe this is an acceptable compromise. The restoration of the portico pavement and the related waterproofing are, we assume, to be approved at staff level, but the photos show that the work is overdue and will be very welcome. We commend the applicant's very careful presentation of alternate schemes, but feel that the best one has been overlooked. The west facade of St. Paul's Chapel is completely symmetrical. Scheme 2.1 on the last page of the presentation would keep this symmetry with the use of a pair of ramps and a pair of handrails. We urge approval of Scheme 7.2. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any additional hands raised, so I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 9 recommends approval. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
All right. I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to any of the comments or make any other final statements.
I mean, we felt that this was a lighter hand actually than the symmetrical scheme. We had looked at it quite a bit. You know, one of the it was a little bit kind of redundant, we felt, and a little bit kind of forced at the end of the day, from what Columbia was doing.
Okay. All right. If there are no final questions, I think we can move to our discussion. So, okay. So Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing? Just to close the hearing.
Just a minute. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi, would you second that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so this is a proposal that is involves regrading and reconfiguring the steps and ramp to create a new barrier-free access and also deal with drainage and other issues. And we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start this one?
Got to turn on my mic. I think this is a pretty easy one. This is a thoughtful proposal in resolving the accessibility issues. They're also helping with the drainage issues and restoring the paving, etc. So I find this appropriate.
Commissioner Chen?
Quite yes, and these are all necessary.
Okay. Vice Chair Bland?
I agree. Appropriate.
All right. Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I think it's completely appropriate.
All right. Commissioner Lutfi?
It's really smart and well done. And I cannot believe how short that ramp is and how easy and quickly people are going to be able to get into the chapel. It's great.
Right. Commissioner Master?
So I did my graduate work at Columbia, and I know how critical this building is, how beautiful it is, and how centrally it's located. And my daughter is there now at Columbia, so I am very happy to vote that this is appropriate.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I spent a lot of time out in front of this building, late nights and early mornings, college and architecture school, 7 years. So I donated plenty to keep this building in shape. But it is it is a stunning building, and it's interesting in that it is very different from the McKim and White buildings. It has a much more much more Stanford Whitey feel on what is a very McKim campus. You know, the campus is very regal and beautiful, but it has a coolness to it that this building completely doesn't have, and it's so warm and rich as a building. It's wonderful that they're getting to it. The sloping of the brick is a great idea. Anybody who's been on that campus knows that the brick exceeds ADA requirements probably and has done so for the last 150 years. The only thing I would comment is they might look at changing the ramp finish to brick. It would kind of disappear a little more. But I think it's okay as is. And I think that I disagree with John Graham. I think that the symmetrical ramps would have been too dominant. I think their solution is very, very effective.
I think it strikes a balance, keeping a podium under the columns and still providing access, but in a very minimal way.
Yeah.
So I think we have a consensus to support. Commissioner Ginsburg, could you read the motion?
With regards to LPC 25-00279, 1160 Amsterdam Avenue, the St. Paul's Chapel, individual landmark, a Byzantine-style chapel built with Italian Renaissance elements, designed by Howell and Stokes and built in 1904 to 1907. Application is to alter the front portico and install a ramp. I recommend approval, finding that this resetting and replacing in kind select multicolored stone pavers will restore the portico floor to its historic appearance and will address water infiltration issues. That the removal of 2 of the 4 stone steps leading to the portico will maintain enough of the solid base to not diminish the classical formality of the facade. That the raising level of the plaza in front of the building, most of which is off the landmark site except where the lower steps are removed, will help resolve grade changes resulting in a shorter ramp to provide the required accessibility. That the proposed ramp featuring granite cladding to match the existing steps and single bronze railing will harmonize with the material palette of the portico and will help to provide the accessibility to in the least intrusive manner possible. And the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the individual landmark.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right. So that's approved. Thank you very much. All right.
Pitch's memorial was held appropriately.
Right.
Started the first preservation program.
Thank you for giving all the versions.
So
too.
that concludes our public hearing today.